Horror Lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you. I'm your regular Wednesday evening host here at BodyBags. It is week 405. It is week number 1 in June. It's random week, and I am about to indulge in some serious Italian cinema. Pretty much from here on out, I think. Compliments of one David Lewin and a nice little package I got some little bit of time ago, and we start this Italian marathon of sorts, excluding of course our theme weeks, our label weeks, and whatnot. But I have a feeling I am going to be neck deep in Italian cinema for a little bit here. But first, our first major stop here, again, compliments of Sir David Lewin. Our first stop here is My Dear Killer, and if you go right from the quote from Inspector Luca at the end, it ought to say My Dear Sick Killer, which I think is pretty cool. But My Dear Killer, from one Tonino Valerii, I think that's how you say it, from 1972, his only giallo ever. He was a director mostly known for spaghetti westerns, and some good ones at that. The only one I'll mention, because I really haven't seen any of them, but the one I'll mention only because I found it on Amazon Prime, which I do plan on watching here soon, is a film that came out in 73 by the name of My Name is Nobody. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Henry Fonda, R.G. Armstrong, Jeffrey Lewis, of course, Roy from Devil's Rejects, right? Antoine St. John, I think, Schweck from The Beyond. Pretty incredible cast, and that's just a few of them. But he is well known for his spaghetti westerns, but for whatever reason in 72, he decided to step into the old giallo type of film. And I think he did an extremely outstanding job. And this is the Shameless edition. I did not look to see if this movie has been released on any other, but it does have alternative artwork. I think the more normalized artwork in the interior. Of course, I prefer that one, and I just have to say this. I don't really talk about the gore that much of films, and I probably should talk about it a little bit. But that buzzsaw scene, man, that is, for me, that is the centerpiece of the entire film in terms of shocking, gratuitous moments. And it really isn't that bad, but it is quite shocking. There's a bit of a lead up to it, but that doesn't change that when the minute the killer unleashes this buzzsaw on this poor girl, it's quite frightening. There's a few frightening moments in this movie. I say he did quite an incredible job. Of course, this just comes a couple years after The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, right? And as a segue into Argento for just a moment, his editor, Franco Fraticelli, who edited this, also edited Deep Red, Suspiria, Opera, Cemetery Man as well. Ennio Morricone, of course, brings the score, which is phenomenal. You can hear a little bit right now. It's absolutely phenomenal. The cinematography, I couldn't make any real connections to anything the cinematographer had done before, but it is pretty awesome. I love how this film is laid out, man. In fact, as I'm watching it, I couldn't help not to think of Hannibal and the Florence, Italy sequence, act maybe. That whole time we're in Florence, Italy, with Pazzi and of course Hannibal, and how Pazzi sort of accidentally, comes to the realization that one of the FBI's most wanted, of course, is right there. And then you got that whole Il Mostro subtext that they filmed stuff, but they didn't put it in there, which is unfortunate because that piece of that film is easily my most favorite. And anytime I think of giallo, or I'm watching giallo, for whatever reason, this movie in particular got me to thinking about the dynamics of Pazzi, his wife, and just some of the things going on. I don't know. It just got me to really thinking about it. And yeah, it's interesting. The story is pretty complex. It does take its time. This is one of those movies that if you watch, you really got to be invested. You want to just sit down and just let it go. But this basically, you got Inspector Luca shows up at a crime scene. This poor guy, man. This poor guy. we're introduced to him early on. We don't know really who he is at first, and I'm going to be careful. This is a giallo, right? And if you decide to watch this, then I definitely want to be very, very careful where I step in terms of spoilers and such, right? But we're introduced to him as a sort of just, here's a guy at the edge of this swampy sort of little lake kind of thing, and he's wanting it dredged for whatever reason. We'll find all this stuff out after. But as he's motioning the guy who's running the crane and stuff, he's not really paying attention. The guy brings the claw right over him, and before he knows what's happening, man, that claw just drops. This is the opening scene of the movie, man, and just latches onto his head and pulls this poor guy up in the air. And before we know it, he lets the claw go, and both head and body come falling. And enter Inspector Luca, who is our main inspector, who is on the case now from that point forward. He will stumble on a much greater case, one that is about a year or so old, one that involves this decapitated guy who, as we find out, an insurance inspector, who's on the case of trying to figure out who was behind killing this poor little girl who's connected with this very wealthy, astute family. It was a kidnapping, ransom type deal, and the dad decided to get involved with the money and everything, and unfortunately things went sour for him, and he ends up killed. But very unfortunately, the little girl also ends up dead. Now this case is about a year old, and so the killer feels free and clear, but the killer is maybe not so free and clear, because Inspector Luca is on the case, and with every step he takes, he finds himself getting closer and closer, and with every step the killer realizes this and tries to basically take this noose effect and tighten it and tighten it and tighten it, meaning quite a few people are going to die. Initially, the major suspect, and I'm probably going to go as far as this. The first major suspect, of course, is the operator of the crane who kills this poor insurance inspector. We find this stuff out later, right? And they find him pretty quick on. He has apparently committed suicide, or has he? That scene alone, man, when Inspector Luca is sort of tearing apart this scene, in terms of, suicide, not suicide, is a murder, there's a bit of black comedy in there, just how his approach is. But and then from that point forward, I'm not going to go any further. He's on the trail, man. The trail is getting hotter and hotter, and the killer is becoming more and more spooked. And like I said, the centerpiece of this is probably the buzzsaw scene. Man, that is next to the crane, the buzzsaw, and there's a few other nice ones in there. And I also need to mention too, this is an Italian-Spanish production. And there is a character in here. There's a few red herrings, and perhaps the point of this scene I'm going to allude to is to further complicate. Is there something wrong with this particular character? And he's I sort of said he already. He is an artist, and there's a really sort of awkward scene where he's talking to Inspector Luca, and then suddenly out of frame or in frame comes this small little girl who is nude, completely nude, and the artist there sort of gets spooked a little bit because he realizes, well, this probably doesn't look good in front of Inspector Luca, and Luca sort of has his, eyebrow raised a little bit, and he very quickly, she's my model, I use her in, his painting and stuff. Anyhow, I mentioned that just to say, if that is something that would, really shock you, maybe this is something, I don't know, maybe you need to avoid or whatever, but it's not, there's nothing gratuitous about the scene at all. And if you've watched enough foreign film, this stuff happens occasionally, and it is what it is. I mean, but there was intent in terms of the writers of the film. There was intent and purpose with that scene. It wasn't there just to shock the senses, so to speak. But anyways, all in all, man, I freaking love this movie, man. It really is a longer film. It takes its time, but I think it's when you get to the final few moments, our final act, where Inspector Luca and the little girl by the name Stefania, I think is how they said her name, that poor little girl, who's really at the center of this entire revolving, or swirling mystery or whatever. There's a lot going on, but at the very end, man, the final act, when Luca has basically brought in all the major characters that are left, has them all sitting in a drawing room, and man, he just unloads, man. It is a memorable climactic finish to a very, very well done giallo from one Tonino Valerii, if that's how you say his name, from 1972. It is but the first of many I'm sure I'm going to do. And dude, the artwork, man, that buzzsaw scene, it is something else. It is. Sometimes scenes don't have to be that bloody, but they're ferocious in intensity, and that one's pretty ferocious in intensity. Enough that startles you a little bit. It's pretty crazy, man. And it just begs the question: why didn't this guy do more? I don't know, man. George Hilton as Inspector Luca is pretty awesome, and just to avoid embarrassing myself, I'll leave the rest of the cast alone, but they're pretty stellar, man. They do freaking awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at there, man. From Italy, Spain, comes the one and only giallo, My Dear Killer, from Tonino Valerii. Shameless release, freaking good stuff, man. Plenty of more of this to come down the pike as we roll into, I think next week is year. It is a year. I want to say it's 71. It's coming down the pike. Anyways, we always leave these things off with go freaking Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream.